Within every generation, a patriarch finds a mysterious connection with his children. Today, separated by thousands of miles, a father and his daughters come together through the use of modern technology to share their unique insights and appreciation of uncommon cocktails and everything within the entire horror movie genre. From the creators of Friday Family Fright Nights, this is Cheers and Fears.
Well, good evening, ladies. It's Halloween. How exciting is this? We actually get to do an episode on Halloween. We're all in different cities right now, but we're connected via the technology of Zoom, which is so awesome. Each having our Halloween drink of choice, and we can talk about those here in a second. How's everybody doing? How's everybody's October and the week of Halloween?
It's almost over, but I love it. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween. Yeah, it's bittersweet. Super excited to be doing this on actually Halloween day, but yeah.
Did you guys get to do anything fun for Halloween?
I threw a little shindig, a little party, dressed as a zombie, as sort of preparation for today's episode, I suppose. Getting them on set, if you will.
Perfect. I did get to go to a haunted attraction earlier this month, some haunted houses. Of course, there were zombies there too, amongst other things. But yeah, it was really fun.
One of these times.
I played some scary video games, kind of tried to get myself in this spooky zone, I guess. Get myself on edge for the season this day.
Elevate yourself to a scary edge. One of these times, Brianna, we have to figure out how to do that underground tour in Seattle. I want to fly up there and then do that tour and see if it's scary or interesting or however it would be.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm super curious. Very curious.
Well, our topic this week is the zombie genre. Not anything specific as far as films, but we all love the zombie genre within the context of horror films. And our drink of choice, we kind of went back and forth between a couple options. And I made my own version because I didn't have everything that was included in the zombie cocktail, because there's different kinds of rum and other things. I'll put that recipe in the description, but I've kind of made it a light version of the zombie cocktail. And there's like one of the drinks had like this grenadine stuff that looked like a blood trail inside. I didn't have any of that. But so what did you ladies end up making for your drinks?
So I found a recipe online on Pinterest that was supposedly a zombie themed drink, probably just because it's green, but it's very simple. It's just got sour green apple schnapps and then vodka, apple juice, and lemon juice. So very easy and sour.
Very nice. Yeah, mine zombie-esque too. Green. I like the theme. This one is pineapple juice, the melon liqueur, triple sec, and then like a soda. So sweet and sour too.
Oh, some sweet and sour in there. Cool.
Yeah, your guys' drinks sound really good. I went a little simpler. I just have my cider here. Nice and tasty seasonal treat. I should have gone more creative again. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's good. It's tasty. It's cider.
It's okay. Do you have any like
I love cider.
creepy ice cubes or anything floating in it, or just drop a spider in there?
I have my cup. I don't know. My eyeball.
That's festive enough.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, yeah. So our topic this week was the zombie genre. And I wanted to pack this week full of everything from the scariest zombie movie I could think of to the funny zombie movies. I've seen Shaun of the Dead, and that's honestly within the horror context, it's one of my favorites. So it's entertaining, and it does have some creepy stuff. They did some great special effects in that, and there's a few jump scares in it, some few creepy things that happen, but it's just a fun movie. I like Simon Pegg and his co-star. But the thing that I wanted to make sure that I got in this week was the original George Romero's Night of the Living Dead in 1968, which I thought was the first real zombie movie, but it was considered a low budget film back then. And there were so many deeper things. I think we talked about this on our Candyman episode too, that he chose to include a Black actor as the main hero in that. And for a 1968 film, that was kind of bold. but the political things and the undertones that I noticed throughout, and if I don't know if any of you have seen it, but there's the conflict between another character that seeks refuge in the house, and you can tell there's some racial issues between the two of them, and there's some conflict and some statements that are made. It's pretty powerful if you have that mindset and you're able to kind of read into some of that stuff. But the scariness factor, it's a low budget film, but the main actor, Dwayne Jones, he really wasn't that popular of an actor at the time. He had since gone on to do a handful of other horror films, but really not that much. But his acting, he outacts everybody in the film. And he's really, to my knowledge, wasn't that seasoned of an actor. So it was really kind of fun watching him just perform. There's two scenes where Dwayne Jones, the main guy, and then the main female actress, they basically get a little monologue where they get to talk through their experiences the first time they experienced the zombie. And he is just so good in that. It's only a few minutes long for both of them, but they talk about how they saw the zombie and interacted with it for the first time and what they did. And you're already a third of the way into the film by that, but it sets a good tone to the film. Like they're genuinely scared. It's something that nobody understood yet. And yeah, I kind of enjoyed that. Other characters come in and the acting is obviously low budget or for the time period, but the guy, the other actor that comes in is kind of an antagonist for the scene. He's still got that 1940s, 1950s type acting style. And it was so funny because it's like, nothing, I say nothing, where they talk like that. And it's just like, what? Who talks like that? And Dwayne Jones is just totally cool. But yeah, the scariness factor, there's a couple scenes in there that are kind of creepy. They took some risks with doing some stunts to actually light some people on fire. And for a low budget film in the late 60s, that was kind of impressive. They're also very patient with their shots. And this is just traditionally with older films, is that they'll let a shot play out, where if you see a car driving in the distance, you'll see it drive the whole distance of the road. Nowadays, they'll give it a couple seconds, they'll jump cut to another scene and just keep the action flowing. But for the time period and for his vision of that, a lot of the shots, you just hold on the shot for a while, and it's very patient and very traditional filmmaking at that time. But upon research, apparently there was a film, I had to take some notes on this one, back in 1938 or 32, called White Zombie. Anybody's a Rob Zombie fan, they'll pick up on that. But this film, White Zombie, in 1932 was considered the first real zombie film. And then more zombie films were kind of created after that in the 30s and 40s, including I Walked with a Zombie in 1943. But still, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead in 1968 was hailed as one of the first commercial zombie films. And then 10 years later in 78, that got a sequel. And I remember seeing that when I was a kid too. It was in the mid 80s when I saw it, but it was Return of the Living Dead, I think, or Dawn of the Dead was the sequel to the Night of the Living Dead. And then another sequel almost 10 years after that called Day of the Dead. And by then the effects were getting pretty gory and pretty interesting, which is another thing that got me interested in the special effects thing. But yeah, it was kind of interesting seeing what I thought was the birth of the zombie character and the storyline, and then how there's certain nods to it, because there's been several movies over the last 3 or 4 decades that will have clips of Night of the Living Dead playing on a TV screen, or you'll hear it in the background and they'll have to credit it, just be giving credit to that. But that's kind of a cool Hollywood nod to George Romero in the original Night of the Living Dead. I like when things are done like that. It's pretty cool. So what about you girls? What was your week of zombie films like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I tried to fill it with a couple of things as far as actually watching movies. I tried to check out what some of the newer ones were. There's this Army of the Dead one that came out this year on Netflix that I watched. went back a little bit and I watched like I Am Legend, and then kind of looked into and thought back on some of the shows too, like Walking Dead was huge, obviously. And but as far as like one of the movies I thought I'd touch on to kind of highlight was, it's a movie called Alone, 2020. It was directed by Johnny Martin, and it kind of follows, or mainly follows, I should say, Tyler Posey, who was the main actor in Teen Wolf MTV series in like mid 2000s. Super good. And his character Aiden, it's set where he, the outbreak happens on his complex, his apartment complex that he, lives in. And so it's all just within mainly his apartment in that building itself, and just that isolation. And, I kind of liked this as an example because it kind of shows more of, what I think a more modern take on the zombie movie would be. And I think, to be in an outbreak like that, that's what I think experience would be more like what he does in the film, in regards to like he's kind of doing this like daily vlog where he checks in on his computer and he's recording how things are doing. He's trying to find little bits of joy and humanity left in like things here and there within his apartment, of course thinking about his family outside the walls. And then it touches too on building a couple relationships when he sees signs of life, alive life. Just like within this movie and a bunch of others, I always think it's very cool to hear the different names of zombies, the different things that people come up with. In this one, you hear like infected or infected screamers a lot in reference to zombies. Some of the other ones in other movies that I like, I feel like infected is used a lot. Walkers, especially like in The Walking Dead. Shamblers for like some of the more, how would you, the withered away, or the ones that have kind of become one with the earth.
Along those lines,
but
that's one of the things I noticed in Night of the Living Dead, was that they didn't really use the word zombie. They were calling them assassins, and I think they did say, well, they said assassins in this meditative state. So there's a radio on and there's a TV on that kind of pulls you through this narrative and keeps telling you what's going on outside of this house that you're stuck in with these people. But I thought that was really curious, like these assassins in the meditative state, so in your head, the word zombie is just the word, but when they were kind of creating that character, you don't call them zombies. So that was funny.
Well, I guess that's a nice segue into the movies I watched a little bit, because Alicia, like you, I wanted to focus a little bit on more modern ones. And then, so I watched a couple of those, and then I watched a classic one, and then I watched a funny one because I wanted to try and kind of bring in a little bit of the Shaun of the Dead energy. So anyway, I'll start with the classic one because I don't have too much to say about it, but 28 Days Later, I call it a classic one. It's from 2002, so it is a little bit older, but it's directed by Danny Boyle, and it stars, I'm gonna say it wrong, Brianna, I ask you every time I try and say his name, Cillian Murphy. It's just a classic, and I think, Alicia, like what you were talking about, it's a little bit more of a realistic take on a zombie movie, like what you would kind of expect to happen, where it's just kind of the breakdown of society following an outbreak of a virus. Mm-hmm. And it starts with the main character, Killian, him waking up in a hospital to a world that's just disheveled, and he has to kind of bit by bit understand that he's now in this world that is overrun with these zombies. I can't remember if they actually I don't think they actually call them zombies, but just bit by bit.
Infected, like no, they say infected, like what Alicia was saying, just infected.
Okay. So yeah, a little bit more realistic, people kind of isolated and trying to help each other and find each other. And yeah, it's got some darker tones, which I appreciate as well, but it's also just really endearing. And I think it kind of talks about the human spirit a little bit and human endurance and what human nature might tend to do given the situation of the breakdown of society due to a virus like that. So beautiful movie, classic. But I watched a more modern one is called The Night Eats the Earth. Came out in 2018. It's based on a book called the same thing, and it's set in France. And similar to Alone, it's Alicia, the movie you were talking about. It's about this guy that he goes to his ex-girlfriend's party. She's throwing a party, but he needs some of his stuff back. So he goes to her apartment and is like, hey, I'm not here to party, I'm here for my stuff. But anyway, gets kind of sucked into having to stay there. He ends up going to an isolated room to get away from everybody and falls asleep. And then when he wakes up, he opens the door and there's like blood on the walls and nobody's there. And he's like, what's going on? And so again, bit by bit, he has to realize kind of the situation he's in. And he ends up stuck in this apartment building by himself for a number of days, scavenging other people's apartments for food and items and clothes and things like that. And it's really interesting because a part of it kind of delves into his psychological reaction of what's going on, being so alone, being completely by yourself other than these other humans that are trying to kill you, and what that kind of would do to your brain a little bit, or what we assume it might do to your brain. So there ends up being this zombie that's stuck in an elevator shaft, and he kind of befriends it a little bit. He'll talk to him, gives him a name, and then at a certain point in the movie, like shakes his hand even and stuff through the grate, because he like, it's his friend. It's been the only thing that he's talked to. And then there's also this instance of him, well, I don't want to ruin it per se, but yeah, it just is kind of a beautiful interpretation of what the psyche might do given that situation. So definitely recommend that one. The Night Eats the Earth. No, excuse me. The Night Eats the World. And then anyway, the last one I watched, a funny one. It's called The Dead Don't Die. It came out in 2019, but it stars Adam Driver and Bill Murray, and it has other really popular actors and actresses. So it's got Steve Buscemi, Tilda Swinton is in it, Danny Glover, and then it's got like a couple of musical icons. So Iggy Pop was in it, which just makes me laugh because that guy's such a character. But anyway, it's really funny, and it's similar to Shaun of the Dead, that kind of humor where Adam Driver and Bill Murray are the small town sheriffs, and all of a sudden these two zombies kill people in a diner. And so the two sheriffs, they go to the diner and they're like, what could have done this? There's blood and there's dead bodies. Was it wild animals? Must have been wild animals. And then very candidly, Adam Driver is like, I think it was zombies. And so then there's this discussion of like, why would you think it was zombies? Like, that's not realistic. Of course it's not zombies. And so that's kind of that sort of a lot of comedic relief when things get heavy. And there's also an interesting part where they kind of break the fourth wall, I think it's called, where they Adam Driver and Bill Murray's characters are sat in the sheriff car together, and they're like, what happens next? Did you read this part of the script? Like, I don't know what happens next here. Did you read the script this far?
Really?
Talking about being in the movie. And I thought that was interesting. So it's a little bit realistic, mostly silly, but overall, I think that's kind of a theme I noticed in the zombie movies that I'm most impressed by or entertained by, are the ones that tend to be, I'll just keep using the word realistic, I guess, where they're trying to really just kind of show what potentially could happen in a situation of a so-called zombie apocalypse. There's another one that I wasn't prepared to talk about, but I think I should. It's called The Cure. And it's that same sort of trying to pull realism into the situation, because the zombie genre is pretty saturated with a lot of stuff. It's really popular. It used to be really popular. And so I think the ones that I could call my favorite ones, or my top 10, are just the ones that, like I keep repeating, just kind of want to be realistic about it. So yeah, it came out in 2017. It's an Irish horror drama. So maybe that's another theme. Yeah, another theme I've noticed is my favorites tend to be foreign, but it stars Elliot Page. Yeah, and kind of about society's trying to gain a grip on the situation, and they end up kind of institutionalizing people who are infected and trying to kind of experiment a cure with them. But yeah, some heavy tones in that one, kind of about like, what would you do if your loved one was infected? You know, and what would you do if you knew you were infected and you were gonna turn? What would you do? Would you turn yourself in, or would you kill yourself, or would you, you know, it's kind of heavy, but those are the kind of situations that I think are a bit more true to what, I don't know, human nature might be more inclined to do, instead of just a bunch of zombies running around trying to kill each other. I don't know. More realistic is the ones I like. And I guess that being said, when it's a virus that makes the zombie rather than some sort of magic or just I guess I
Yeah,
don't really
like
know.
in Night of the Living Dead, it was a radiation leak or something that had come in, and so yeah, that differentiation that they have of some kind of released virus versus something natural that happens in the world that becomes infectious, and they try to get creative with different ways.
Yeah, that was a bit of a ramble, but that's my spiel. Those are kind of my top ones, the ones I watched. So
It is me.
I'll see if there's anything I can add. The main one I was going to talk about was 28 Days Later. I love that film. So good, so amazing. The reasons I had for why I love it so much as a zombie film, because some people argue that it's not actually a zombie film. It just depends on your definition of a zombie, because technically in the movie, I guess, they're not really dead. Like, they get infected with the virus or whatever, but they're not dead. So like, does a zombie have to be dead or whatever, you know, whatever. Anyway, so it's post-apocalyptic, kind of like mostly everyone is like wiped out or a zombie. And that's kind of a detail I liked because it's super scary. Like, the end of humanity possibly is what the main character is dealing with. So another thing I liked, the remaining humans, so what we see, like the military guys in that movie, they're also pretty dangerous. So like, you're living in a world where like human, infected or not, is a threat to you and your safety and stuff like that, potentially, especially if you're a woman, it turns out. And then, oh, like my favorite, I don't know if you guys, well, you guys will probably know, like the build up at the end with that song, and maybe you don't know, but it like starts to build as soon as the two guards go, and their job was to take out the main character or whatever. So yeah, Cillian Murphy gets away in the coolest way by pretending to be dead, kind of like disguising himself in a pile of dead bodies or whatever, while his hands are handcuffed and everything, and he's running away, escaping, and everything. It's just amazing. And the build that happens while he's like, you know, taking out these guards that go after him, and he just wants to make it back to save Selena and, you know, the young girl and stuff. So amazing soundtrack as well for that one.
Mhm.
But yeah, I love that movie, 28 Days. It's wonderful. The sequel, 28 Weeks, not as good. Very disappointing. I thought it was pretty boring. For me, it's important to have characters that you either relate to or you like want to relate to, like you have interest in, or they intrigue you or whatever. And that movie didn't really pull me in like other characters, like because like in 28 Days you have Killian, and then you have Selena, but you have the daughter and the dad, which is Brendan Gleeson from Harry Potter. I don't know if you guys, but yeah, he was the dad, and he ends up becoming infected, which is super sad, but a super cool detail, because it's someone's got to die in the group. I don't know, you know, like everyone just can't live. But yeah, and then some other zombie movies, Zombieland, I really like. I love how it begins, how it introduces to you that you're watching a zombie movie, because Jesse Eisenberg's character is with this attractive young woman in an apartment, and then all of a sudden she's like starting to turn into this crazy cannibalistic creature, and he's hilarious, obviously. So that one's amazing.
What's the source of transition in Zombieland? Is it an infection, or is it, do you know how somebody becomes a zombie?
I think in Zombieland, they were just kind of like, it happens to you or whatever if you get bitten by them. So yeah, like an infection virus. Yeah,
Okay.
I think. I didn't watch that one this week, so I guess it's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that one too, and I can't remember how. Obviously, it's transmitted if you get bitten, and
Yeah.
then you get whatever it is that they have. But I'm always curious of what the origin is, whether there's something released into the world or it's something, because even in Night of the Living Dead, they make a comment about there's space specialists are being brought in to investigate this new outbreak, and so they're looking for some ways like, how did this happen? How did it start? Where's the origins of it within the storyline? Sometimes they try to get creative and sometimes they don't. They're just like, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's just some infection.
Well, yeah, that reminds me of World War Z, right? With Brad Pitt. That's a good zombie movie.
Hmm.
Came out in 2013. I wrote that one down. Oh yeah, and then one that I really liked as well. It was a French Canadian one, like Lexi's, but it's called The Ravenous. Came out in 2017. Yeah, so it's about a plague that takes over and kind of rots your brain somehow. And it's a really good zombie movie because, and it's not in English, but there's subtitles. You're like, they don't really give you that many answers, I guess. So you're like, you enter the film and it's like, oh, it's zombie. Then you're like, oh, like what's happening? Why are they zombies? And kind of throughout the whole entirety of the film, you don't really even know. And at the very end of the film, they leave you with just, you need a bigger question, because all these zombie people strangely have the same goal of stacking random items on top of each other into just a singular pile. All of the zombies just bring stuff to this pile. And there's even a scene at one point where the zombies see this alive couple or whatever person, and they're like, no, I don't care. I care more about the pile. So it's just interesting, because then you're like, what kind of zombie is this? Now this is a new kind where it's like they have weird random goals that no one knows why. So that's something I appreciated about that one, because it kind of just like opened the door to like what a zombie could be or whatever. So, oh, and I wrote down some facts about 28 Days Later because I thought they were cool. The director actually cast athletes as zombies in the film so you could sense their power. So he wanted like the extras to be really, good at sprinting. So that I appreciated, because I think it came across. Because I think for me, a good zombie movie as well is usually if they can chase you and if they're a real threat, So yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, Lexi, I was going to mention that when you were talking about The Dead Don't Die, which I saw as well, that kind of, their self-awareness kind of reminded me of how they went with Scream, or how they did that in Scream, how they kind of tried to create this like meta, like, self-awareness type of thing.
It looks like The Dead Don't Die was directed by Jim Jarmusch. And also, I was going to mention, I'm pretty sure that Brandon Gleeson is in this one too. Anyway, tons of famous people in that movie.
And I was going to mention the name of the song in case anyone wants to know the song that I was talking about at the end of 28 Days that I love. It's called In the House by John Murphy. So it's instrumental, but it's a vibe and it's good.
Add that to the playlist. Mm-hmm. I like that you talked about having a different goal for the zombies, or like what they're, as they become in some movies, right, this whole new creature, kind of having a different goal in mind. The other movie that I had watched, the Army of the Dead, from this just this year, excuse me. It's a Zack Snyder film, but in that movie, it all revolves around this new species, this horde that has taken over Las Vegas, and I think it even kind of hints at being able to like procreate amongst this like hybrid species. And that's one where the origin from that stems from, they make it seem like some sort of government experimentation, and the creature gets loose and of course, infects a bunch of people. But yeah, I kind of like when there's a little bit of a different, because I feel like I don't see that a ton. Most of them, they're just kind of brain dead and they just keep trying to find flesh, right, to consume.
Mhm.
And in a lot of movies, if they don't, or if they don't have anything to feed on, they just kind of wither away, right? So
Except in like The Walking Dead, wasn't one of the main guys in The Walking Dead just keeping the heads alive in tanks or something, and there was no sustenance, or no whatever, but they were just living eternally. And I guess that would be the only way they would have to completely just go away, was they would decompose.
that's definitely creepy. That's a good point. Yeah, the governor, when he has all those, and that I think kind of adds to, well, even in Army of the Dead, this 2021 movie, as they're entering on this heist, entering the city, there's a bunch of them that are just kind of like within the dirt. And I think one of the characters makes a comment that it hasn't rained in so long. So that's why they're kind of like in this hibernation state. So maybe keeping those heads in those tanks is somehow across the zombie universe a way to keep them moisturized, right? A little bit of life that way.
You were talking about relationship with a zombie, kind of reminded me of Warm Bodies, which
That's what I was going to ask you about. Thank you.
Yeah, which I used to really like. I like that main actor who I used to always know the name of. But yeah, I used to love that movie. But in the end, that's a different kind of zombie movie, because in the end, he gets cured of his zombieism and can be in love with a human again. I don't remember how, but yeah.
That reminds me, in 28 Days Later, did we just mention that? Sorry, I zoned out a little bit doing a little bit of research, but in 28 Days Later, that the government, or the soldier camp that they keep this one zombie that they're like toying with for entertainment in a way. And yeah, Cillian Murphy's character lets him go at the end, and you can see this kind of moment of, is it going to come after me? I just let it loose. But it kind of almost, I think Cillian's character somehow knew that by freeing that zombie, the zombie was going to emotionally be able to have the capacity to be like, no, you saved me. I understand that. I'm going to go get the people that have been torturing me.
Yeah, like he has the most prominent thoughts and memories in his mind are his torture and his like solitude.
Mhm.
So probably he's not like, I don't know, which is different. It's cool because he's banking on it. He's betting on the zombie not going for him.
Mhm.
Yeah, these common things that I like when they are attempted to be broken away from. Like the common thing is some sort of infection. Can they be healed? Is there any way to be healed? Because most of the time there isn't. You just have to burn them or shoot them in the head or something. But the common thing is like, do they run or do they walk and stumble? And so when these zombie genre films have something that is apart from that, I immediately focus in on that. And I appreciate that they've done something that doesn't just rely on the typical, 3-point zombie movie where they got infected, they're seeking flesh, and the only way you can kill them is, burn them, and there's no way to be healed and all that. So when I stumbled across a zombie movie like the movie that you mentioned, Allie, that Army of the Dead, I started watching that weeks ago, not even realizing it was a zombie movie, but that was something that was different, that they had, the zombie was this almost an inner culture. Now, granted, they were kind of captive in this area that the military had created these walls around them, but yet they had created a hierarchy and a social system and a possible reproduction. It was very interesting. And there was like almost a royalty to that. But I've loved it and I was trying to find out what was the first movie where they had running zombies. And I thought it was 28 Days Later, but I don't think it is.
I like the slow walkers, where all of a sudden they just seem to like multiply without even knowing. Because I think that's almost creepy, where you think you have all this time to get away, but you don't, just because they're moving slow. Slow and steady wins the race, right? We learned that young.
All of a sudden there. Yeah, that's a good point.
And they're
I like that versus these like hybrid zombies that are super strong and can run. I mean, that's scary too, and in a way a lot harder to beat. But I think there's something to the slow walkers that I appreciate as far as the classic point.
I want to know what everyone's zombie apocalypse weapon would be.
Oh yeah. No firearms. Definitely not.
Yeah, guns.
I need something all reliable. Yeah.
I know.
that I can
Unless it's like a shotgun. But yeah, I think mine would be like an axe or something.
Can I use sting? Is that allowed?
Yeah, that's yeah.
A little smaller, a little less heavy.
I'm not very strong, so I don't know if I'm strong enough for an axe to be effective. I think maybe like an aluminum bat, like baseball bat, or like a crowbar. I don't know.
That's something easier to hold.
Stuck. It can.
How can get stuck?
Yeah, an axe gets
machete.
Oh, your axe is gonna get stuck. Yes, machete.
Yeah, machete would be good. How many of you watched The Walking Dead up to the point? Because I only watched it for first few seasons, but when the other character was introduced and he was carrying a bat that had barbed wire wrapped around it.
Negan, yeah, his bat Lucille. Yeah.
I always thought that was a very intimidating weapon, very fitting for that. But so you were talking about the beginning of 28 Days Later, where Cillian Murphy wakes up in a hospital bed to discover that he's basically in this apocalyptic period, and slowly but surely he starts to see zombies. Now that's kind of exactly the same way that The Walking Dead starts, right? Where the sheriff wakes up, nobody else around, and then he all of a sudden discovers a zombie, and then other living people discover him and rescue him from that. Is that?
That's true. Andrew Lincoln, he does. He is in a hospital, which it's cool as it kind of progresses on, the flashbacks that kind of happen to that. And I feel bad. I can't quite remember how he got connected up with like his wife and his son and his partner at that time too, and kind of how that all builds. But yeah, super good show. I'm not all current, but I am up to seasons where we have Negan as one of the new characters, and yeah, Greg Nicotero and plenty of others as far as like directing and creating that show. It's very good as far as special effects and like loving that part of the zombie genre. Really great in that movie, and being able to kind of, you know, have connections with characters. I think that's like one of the nice things when it's a show for the characters that survive anyways till the next week. Being able to almost have that deeper connection and feel more connected to different characters. And it's cool on how long that one's been going on, because it shows, I think, a lot of what you learn very quickly, which isn't a lot of movies too, is sometimes the actual people that are still human are even scarier than the walkers, and kind of that loss of humanity and what kind of person you become. Yeah,
that's something that really happens consistently through The Walking Dead, right? Is that they have these compounds of the uninfected or whatever, and then there's almost a militant type of system that gets in place there, where they're killing themselves within that own, you know, the human people are still killing themselves. And maybe that kind of relates to what you're saying, Lexi, is that what would we do in that scenario? What would human beings become, you know, forced into that type of scenario? And just even evil can come out of somebody that is unexpected.
Yeah, human beings are the scariest type of monster, but you know, that reminds me of The Cured, the movie I was talking about, where they invent a cure for the infection that creates these zombie creatures, which is not something that you see very often with zombie movies. And so there's this population of human beings that have been cured, and then they're like discriminated against in like a lower class of people because they once were zombies, and so it's harder for them to get jobs.
Oh, wow.
and people like bully them. And so that's an interesting sort of social commentary as well, where it's like that division of classes, which is all too realistic. But how are we doing on time? I want to bring up one more zombie film. Am I allowed to, or I'll be quick. It's just one that I really should have mentioned earlier. It's called Cargo. Came out in 2017. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
Yes.
Another foreign zombie film. It's Australian. And it's beautiful. It's got the Martin Freeman, who is the modern Bilbo Baggins from the Hobbit series. Love him. It tugs on the heartstrings, and it's one of those movies where you fall in love with the character. And I'll ruin it a little bit by saying that Martin Freeman's character, he gets infected, and in the movie they have 48 hours, like exactly, until they're going to turn completely, but they start showing symptoms within a certain number of hours. And so he has a baby. His wife has been infected and she's since dead. And he starts traveling to hopefully this hospital where he's heard of people like starting a compound and helping each other. So he wants to bring his daughter there to just save her at least. And along the way, he runs into this younger girl whose whole family kind of left her because they're part of the Aborigine culture, the Aborigine people, who kind of went back to the old ways to kind of fight this disease that's happened, which is kind of an interesting sort of social commentary as well. But this younger girl, keeps her dad as like a pet, so to speak, and is like feeding him rabbits and things, and doesn't want anybody to hurt him. And it's just quite beautiful. And so it's another one that I definitely recommend. Cargo.
Wow.
I'd keep you guys. Don't worry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You keep us as pets.
Yeah.
Although, what would you feed us?
Harness.
Those little 3-point harnesses so we can.
Maybe a muzzle, but details.
That was a sad thing that I remember about Walking Dead, was that guy keeping his daughter, just hoping there was some kind of cure. And that I like that sometimes that gives you a little sense of hope. Sometimes in those movies, you're just this impending sense of doom where it's like, the only way this is going to end is when all the zombies take all the human lives, because the zombies aren't going to die off. And so you get a tease of thinking maybe there's a cure of something, like even in I Am Legend, where he's working on a cure the whole time. That's his whole objective, because he himself is immune from the disease, the virus that's causing people to turn into that. So you're hoping that he can come up with that. You're rooting for that. And so when there's these zombie movies that give you that sense of somebody's trying to come up with a cure, and that's in World War Z as well, right? With Brad Pitt, and they go into a lab, and did they eventually find the cure in that one?
By the way, that's like one of the most exciting scenes in the film, when he's in the like lab area and there's that zombie just like on the other side of this thing and he has to inject himself. He's like, ooh, is it gonna make me immune? Anyway, yeah. It works.
Yeah. Because he risks it and he injects himself with that cure. That's cool. Yeah. Well, I think it's too hard to really contain. I was going to bring a handful of zombie movies, but even you girls talking about other things reminded me of other movies I've seen over my lifetime that have been kind of zombie films, and I've loved them. The first thing I always noticed and that I always appreciated about The Walking Dead was the attention to the makeup, the prosthetics and the special effects. And they even they'll cast handicapped people that are missing limbs and are somewhat not, naturally, and the people in the costume will allow them to accentuate that, that different type of body that they've got. And I always thought that was a cool addition because of my leaning towards prosthetics and the special effects makeup. And it was cute in Night of the Living Dead, where they were incorporating blood in that. And for a 1960s film, that's impressive. It was in black and white, but the methods that they would use for blood splatter and for blood to get on things. And I'd love to find out what they used for blood in that film, because it's very unnatural looking, but I thought it was great that they did it anyway.
I've actually never seen, I think I've seen the first episode of The Walking Dead. I think that's it.
Oh, I haven't.
You just weren't interested?
I think I was a little overwhelmed with how many seasons or episodes, and yeah, I think I got bored a little too. I wasn't hooked, maybe. I don't know.
Well, they even have spin-offs from that now too. Fear the Walking Dead and stuff. It just boom, this whole new world.
I've played the video games as well. There are video games that I love zombie video games.
I like watching a lot of like the playthroughs. Yeah. What was the one with Ellie? What's the name of that game? Why can't I think of the name of the game?
Last of Us?
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you. Last of Us. First one was better than the second one, but yeah, that's a fun one too to watch.
I like Dying Light a lot.
And then of course you got your Call of Duty zombies.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, see, we opened up a whole new can here.
Left 4 Dead. That one as well.
Yeah.
So what do you think makes a good zombie film? Why do you think that when The Walking Dead came out, they weren't really creating anything, but they tapped into something, that the reason that show is run for I don't even know how many seasons at this point, and then has had spin-offs and they've been successful and the actors and actresses have gone off to do other things. What do you think it is that why people enjoy zombie films?
So many things. I think the big one with The Walking Dead is it became kind of a within the household, you know. I mean, granted, yes, there is definitely some scary imagery and depending on like, you know, ages and who's all allowed to watch or whatever. I mean, that was something that, at least in my experience, it was very easy to connect with other people on that show that was airing, I mean, Sunday nights, and you had something to chat about Monday morning. And for me, when that was going on, because it started in 2010, and then while I was going to school at SDSU, a lot of us students gathered down together in the common area for all of us to watch together on Sunday nights. And I think with that one, it's just, you know, as far as the show and what makes people like that is, I think especially for people who maybe aren't like as into the horror genre, they like felt like they were a part of that community because they were watching Walking Dead. I think that was a nice introductory like type show for people to watch that maybe weren't already into it. Like that was their intro to zombies. Among other things, I mean, so many characters that so easily to fall in love with. So kind of that like the humanity part of it, as well as the special effects and being able to go on the topic of, well, what would you do in a zombie apocalypse? Or like, you know, having that kind of discussion, I think is really entertaining for a lot of people. What would be your weapon of choice? You know, like, what would you do if you got bit? Like, I just think it's something that there's so many different directions and components that it's something that really so many can relate to in different ways, just depending on what part of it is your favorite or what you're most drawn to. That was a long answer.
No, it's good though. But you prefer the slow walking zombies versus the fast walk, the running, the sprinting zombies?
I think that's scarier. Yeah. All of a sudden there's just like, you think there's one or two in the distance. You're like, I got time, you know, I'm stuck in this trap. I can get out. And all of a sudden you look up again and then there's 10 of them and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's okay. I can get out of this. And then you look up again and then there's 20 on top of you. They may be slow, but they seem to multiply quickly. It's crazy. Yeah. No running zombies, please. It's creepy, but not as creepy.
I just want to say, running zombies are scarier and more dangerous. Okay, I don't care about this whole, oh, I'm good, I got time to get out of this trap. No, whatever. Okay, running zombies.
If you're in that trap and there are running zombies, you don't have any time anymore.
You're done.
But at least it's quicker. You have less time to be scared. You think there's hope. See, that's even worse when you think there, and then it's just bam, done.
So you're on my side. Running zombies are worse.
No, you have there's less time to sit there being scared.
That's true. And running, the fast zombies will maybe kill you quicker, maybe. Because slow zombies can't move that fast. They sure can't touch you that fast, grab you that fast. I mean, bite that fast.
It's like it's happening in slow motion or something.
Yeah.
Oh, slow bites.
Yeah.
Well, the creepiest thing is when I remember seeing, which I think it was the Day of the Dead, which was one of the follow-ups, I think, to Night of the Living Dead. And they were still slow moving then, but how slow they would be tearing somebody apart or biting into somebody was like, that was just, that was disgusting for me, rather than zombie movies where I think in World War Z, or maybe in 28 Days Later, where the zombies will come upon somebody and they'll just tear them to shreds. I mean, it'll just like that. They just rip them up. And although that's disgusting to watch, or something, just, I don't know, it wasn't as creepy, I guess.
Well, I was going to bring up a point quick that might have some people rolling their eyes, but on the topic of why people maybe like zombie movies or are drawn to that sort of story, is potentially it could stem from the metaphor of a fear of death. So like people are afraid of dead bodies. Why? Because it's uncomfortable, because it reminds you of death and being dead. And so to kind of have that metaphor literally brought to life and have like a dead person coming after you, I don't know, you can twist it and convolute it any which way, but I thought, you know, the metaphor of just the human nature of being taught to fear death could potentially play a part in that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good point.
No, that's cool. I'm
No,
processing
I
it.
agree.
My brain can't-
Yeah.
Everybody's
my brain
silent.
processes in silence. I don't think I need a few minutes.
Well, yeah, I wasn't prepared to really chew on that. I wondered that before. It's like, why are zombie movies popular? And when I was watching the older ones, I was thinking, why did this ever become a thing? You know, why the Walking Dead people, if they come back from the dead, and then why they're flesh eating, you know, that when they created that type of character, you know, as we think of like a Jason or a Freddy Krueger and the characteristics of that, you know, there's a lot of these unique things that they pulled in, but something that's been just so consistent with the zombie thing is that, yeah, it's maybe people just fear death and the afterlife, and how much horrible would it be to be in this continual, you know, living dead state, and how much more horrible is it that your state of survival is killing others, and it's this horrible existence, you know. And then you see that contemplated in certain characters when they've gotten bitten or scratched, and they're like, I can't, don't let me become that, I can't do that. And so they either take their own lives or they ask somebody to kill them because they're so horrified by the thought of being in that existence of just, you know, the living dead. It is. I mean, it's very uncomfortable to think about that. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been a fun dive into the living dead topic, the zombie movie genre, from going back to the late 1930s all the way up till even some movies that have come out just this year. You girls have given me some movies that I want to go back and see, and some ones like the one you mentioned, Ravenous. I had heard of that, and I think I'd seen the trailer for that. And even though it's a foreign film, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I want to go see that. But the zombie topic is still as popular as, you know, whatever Untapped did in 2010 when Walking Dead came out, and movies are still being made. Even the low budget ones are doing really well at festivals right now, and I saw a bunch of those on Netflix and Tubi, I think, one of the other streaming services that we've got. When you just do a search on zombie films, you get a whole month's worth of movies to watch. And whether you like them scary or funny, gory or no blood at all, it's an endless supply, and it's a fun topic too. And ones with big Hollywood stars like Will Smith to no-name actors and actresses that are up and coming too. It's a fun genre, and I appreciate all the filmmakers out there that are still giving those to us, and the people that introduced that character to us in the first place. But my zombie drink is about empty, so I'm actually going to go make a refill and see if I have any trick-or-treaters tonight. But I hope you girls have a fantastic rest of your Halloween. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and sharing your thoughts on zombie films.
Yes, happy
Yeah.
Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
All right, well, till the next time, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
This has been Cheers and Fears. Be sure to give a 5-star rating and share before it's too late.
Do you have any like
I love cider.
creepy ice cubes or anything floating in it, or just drop a
No,
spider in there?
I have my cup. I don't know. My eyeball.
Yeah, this is pretty good. All these drinks that we end up.
What is happening down there? Is that an ad?
It wasn't. It's part of the haunted, haunted live stream.
boo.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
That was a jump scare. The different movies that.
Sorry.
And I thought I was gonna have ads because I'm on YouTube and Lexi's not.
I
Lexi
didn't know
doesn't
there were
like
ads on live streams, I swear. Anyway, love him. But it is, again, a more, dare I say, realistic take. No, it's not. Okay, anyway.